Okay, I'm back out here with the Eachine Mini Cessna. I made one minor, easy for me to say, one minor modification, and I moved the control rod for the elevator to the inside servo arm, so that should soften it up a bit. I've got it in beginner mode for launch, so let's get it in the air. Oh, yeah, I didn't bring my timer. I didn't get my timer. I guess I'll have to guesstimate. That was about 50% throttle on the launch. Alright, that's beginner mode. Alright, so let's gain some altitude and see about putting it in intermediate mode. Okay, we're in intermediate mode, and it looks like it's still nosing up a bit. And looks like it's still nosing up a bit on me, yeah. And okay, I've got a loop out of it. See if we can bring it down a little bit. I think I'm going to have to adjust that elevator. Right across the sun. The elevator feels a little bit softer than it did, but it's still kind of twitchy. There's a decent loop out of it. A little down trim in the elevator. A little more. That looks a little better. Okay, so let's gain some altitude. And put it in manual mode. Okay, there we go, in manual mode. Drifting to the left a little bit. My aileron trim doesn't seem to be working very well. couldn't quite pull a loop out of it in manual mode. A little more down trim on the elevator. Oh, not quite. Okay, so let's slow it down a little bit. Stay out of the sun. Definitely have more aileron authority in manual mode, which is what I'm in right now. So it's not too bad in manual mode. After softening up the elevator, still feel like I'm chasing it a little bit on the elevator. But if I can bind this up to multi-protocol transmitter, and put some expo in it, it's going to be a much different plane in expert mode or manual mode. Whenever I come out of a turn, I kind of have to push the nose down a little bit. Seems to want to climb a little bit, so I might still be a little tail heavy. Certainly not like it was before the modification. Just couldn't get a loop out of it. Alright. I'll put it back in beginner mode now. That was quite a long time in expert mode. And you can immediately feel much less aileron as soon as you put it into gyro mode. And that's, it has a little more in intermediate than it does a beginner. But definitely feel the difference going from expert to beginner. That's a pretty nice turn radius though, putting rudder in it. Now it's slowed down. Pretty good turn radius, even in beginner mode using aileron and rudder together. See that? That's pretty good. And it seems like it's, I'm not seeing any tip stalls out of it yet. Keeping the speed up in a tight turn at about 55% throttle. At least I haven't seen it yet. But I've always found that a tail-heavy condition on a plane contributes to tip stalls. Okay, so I don't know how long I've had it in the air. So let's come back around and land it in beginner mode. Gliding. Should have kept the throttle up a little bit at the end. But nice in beginner mode, and I do think that was an improvement in beginner mode, and being able to make those tight turns and not seeing a wing drop on it at all. I'll have to let's put another battery pack in it and put it back in beginner mode, and see if we can do a stall turn without it rolling over again like it did last time. But I still feel like it's slightly tail heavy, but it is an improvement. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, flight number 2. I've got it in beginner mode again. Let's get it in the air. That was about 50% throttle. That was pretty comfortable for launch. Very slow. Yeah, one thing I noticed is that, you know, you don't have a lot of throttle resolution on these, you know, these stock transmitters that come with it. Pretty sweet though, huh? In beginner mode. Okay. So let's put it in intermediate mode again, climb up a bit. Okay, so we should be in intermediate mode now. Whee! Yeah, that definitely helped with the elevator. You know, it takes a while to get used to it. There we go. That wasn't very high off the ground. There we go. Now I'm using more rudder there than I am aileron. Seems like when you use a lot of aileron in the turn in intermediate mode, yeah, it noses down a bit. So you got to use some back pressure on the elevator in intermediate mode. It doesn't seem to hold its pitch axis as well as in, see that? As in beginner mode. Okay, so let's gain some altitude and let's see what a vertical stall looks like in intermediate mode. If it'll let me. Alright, that's what it looks like. that was as good as I could hold it in a vertical position with the with the gyro trying to ride itself. So that wasn't bad. The gyro did a pretty good job of recovering when I had it in a pretty wicked attitude there. Okay, oh, I was going to try a stall turn again. Okay, let's try that. I just want to see if the wing dips on me again like it did last time. So let's see. Oh no, that was much better, wasn't it? Yeah, and I think that is completely due to that, you know, not being so tail heavy now. That didn't look bad at all. I'll bring it back around and try that again. Because the last time I tried it, before I softened the elevator and made a minor modification to it to make it not so tail heavy, it really wanted to roll over and dip that wing, and that's 2 right now, and it looked really, really good. So I think we're definitely getting there. Okay, I'm going to gain some altitude again. I know it's hard to see this, but I don't want to lose this plane yet. Yeah. Okay, that's manual mode. Now what I want to see, I'm going to bring it back around. I want to see what a normal stall looks like in manual mode. So gain some altitude. Okay, there it is. Dropped its nose and went on. That's what I was hoping for. Cool. Okay, I got it back in beginner mode now. So we've seen a vertical stall in intermediate gyro mode. We've seen a regular stall in manual mode. And it just dropped its nose, picked up speed, gained lift, and went on. Which is definitely what I like to see. So it's very close. I think the CG on it now, the balance is very close. I think that it's still just ever so slightly tail heavy. I think if I can move that back, get that CG moved forward about another 2 millimeters, I think it will be right where it needs to be. Okay. So let's go another circuit here and bring it in for a landing. Maybe I get a little softer landing this time. I don't know. Yeah, that was better, although farther away.
Okay, so I thought that went significantly better than the first outing. It wasn't nearly as tail heavy. I didn't see it drop a wing. I didn't see it attempt to do a tip stall. The loops in intermediate mode were nice and clean. The stall turns in intermediate mode were nice and clean. I think with the balance a little bit better on it than what it was stock, I think that it's going to have better slow flight capability because it's not going to be trying to stall those tips. So what did I do? Okay, so we already talked about the elevator, and the elevator was a huge improvement. It's still a little twitchy, but all of these planes with the stock transmitters, because there's not a lot of resolution on them, and you can't set expo, they're all a little twitchy in intermediate mode and in manual mode. But it was flyable. It just took a little getting used to. You have to be a little bit softer on the elevator. After I'd had it in the air for, I don't know, 3 or 4 flights, I was getting a lot better with it in intermediate mode and in expert mode, and I actually accidentally launched it in expert mode 2 times, forgetting to switch it back into beginner mode, and it took right off. I didn't have any problems with it, and of course once I made my first turn I realized that I was in manual mode and switched it back. But You know, I tried doing a roll with it again in manual mode. I flew it with and it just couldn't do it. I just don't have enough deflection on the ailerons. That's the only control issue right now. I got plenty of rudder, plenty of elevator. Even though the elevator is set up mechanically for the least amount of movement, you saw the loops and stuff, it still has plenty of control in the pitch axis. I just don't have a lot of control in the roll axis, not enough to do a decent roll with it. So I'm going to be working on that, but the stall turns look good, loops look good. So what did I do besides change the linkage on the elevator? Well, I cut off the end of the tail wheel, and I thought maybe I could remove the tail wheel, but it's actually, the tail wheel assembly is actually part of the entire assembly where the screws go through to tie on the horizontal stabilizer and the rudder. So I just took a pair of side cuts and I clipped it off. Now, one thing I noticed when I was out there the first time was this tail piece right here, this foam piece, this tail that has the half circle cut out of it for the elevator movement. It was just right up against the bottom of the rudder when I took it out and flew it the first time. So what I did was I just applied some glue on that plastic and on that foam, and then I just took a little servo shield. I suppose it's about 3 millimeters thick, and I slid that in between the bottom of the rudder and the top of that foam piece and let it set overnight. And now that little foam piece is nice and rigid, and it's well away from the rudder, so it's not going to interfere with the rudder anymore. So once I removed the tail wheel, I took a little section of 4-inch black zip tie, and I cut a little section of that, and then I basically slotted it into the 2 holes where the screws go. And then I just added a little dab of foam cure on the top of those holes, so that if I need to get to those holes, it's going to be real easy to pull that out, clear that hole, and then glue it back in again. So, and that made it rigid enough. You know, when I was out there flying and landing today, it worked out well. So once I did that, I put it on the scales, and I had reduced the weight by 0.48 grams. So I removed 0.48 grams from the tail. Okay, but I still didn't have the CG where I thought it needed to be, and I still don't have the CG where I think it needs to be. I found a screw that weighed 0.48 grams. And so I inserted that into the very front of the fuselage right here. And so I basically moved the 0.48 grams from the tail to the nose. Now that moved the CG forward about 4 millimeters. I think you need to be between 5 to 6 millimeters further forward than the stock setup. And I think that would put you, if I remember correctly, the stock CG was right at 40 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing. So I think if you can get it back to 34 to 35 millimeters on your CG from the leading edge of the wing, you're going to be golden as far as the balance. So it was almost there, but not quite. So I think what I'm going to do, I wanted to test it before I increased the weight of the plane, because all I did was shift weight. I didn't increase the all-up weight of the plane. It's exactly the same. But I think what I'm going to do is add another 0.48 gram screw to the front of the fuselage, and I think that's going to put the CG where it needs to be, and I'm going to only increase the weight by 0.48 grams, so I think that I can live with that. Now, what I will do is I will take pictures of the screw that I used, where the screw was located, so you guys can see it better, and I'll take a picture of the little zip tie down here modification that I did for the landing gear, and I'll post that on our Facebook page with images so you can get a better idea of what I was doing. This plane, I think, is very well made. I think it's better made than a lot of the micro planes that I have, and I love the landing gear. These have rubber wheels on them, rubber tires, and the landing gear is pretty robust compared to the other micro planes that I have. The struts prevent the main wing from flexing. They They put carbon reinforcement in the ailerons, they put carbon reinforcement in the horizontal stabilizer, they put carbon reinforcement in the elevator. And I like having these clevises that you can adjust your mechanical trim with, your mechanical linkage with, and trim the plane mechanically, because the stock transmitter will not remember your trim. You have to either have a hobby grade transmitter that will remember your trim settings, or you're going to have to mechanically trim them. Luckily for me, I mechanically trim all of my planes, so I'm used to doing that. So I'm going to do some more mechanical trimming on this plane before I take it out next time. I'm going to add another 0.48 grams of weight on the nose, and I think that this plane's balance and its CG is going to be right where I need it. And then I will conclude the review at that time, and then I'm going to see if I could set it up with the TX16S or the W-Flight ET16S and take it out and fly it with a hobby grade transmitter. So stay tuned for that. But so far I'm having a lot of fun with this plane. Flies extremely well. The gyro works really, really well, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.